Hello and welcome to another episode of 7 Minutes of Precision. My name is Sharif, I'm your host, and today's guest is an influential person in the firearms community in Canada. I don't think I need to introduce you, but today we have Rod Giltaca, the CEO of the CCFR. Rod, welcome to the show. We're honored to have you with us today.
Thank you, Sharif.
How's it going on the West Coast?
Probably the same as it's going everywhere.
Right?
It's a rocky
Okay.
road. It's a rough ride.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it. So, what's the CCFR and why did you guys feel the need to create another gun advocacy group in Canada?
Well, the CCFR is basically Canada's gun lobby. We're the largest and most active firearm rights organization that there has been, and I would like to take credit for that. It sounds like a really big claim, but we just haven't had a lot of strong firearm organizations. I don't know, maybe because we didn't really need them before. There was kind of an equilibrium after the 90s, but a group of people, gun owners, had come together. I wasn't in that group, but a group of people came together to form the CCFR about 10 years ago. And the idea was there were so many aspects of advocacy that weren't being done. There was no public
Mm-hmm.
relations, people reaching out to non-gun owners. There was very little government collaboration going on. And even when it happened, it didn't really yield a lot of results. There
Okay.
was no one working to improve the image of licensed gun owners. There was very little work happening to increase the amount of gun owners, whether it's programs at ranges or range days or that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different things that should have been being done. I think that a lot of people felt that weren't, and that's why the
Okay.
CCFR was created.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, run me a little bit. May 1st, 2020, we had, I don't want to, it's not the first ban, but we had a big firearms ban in Canada. How did that happen? Why did it happen? And, where are we now today with this?
Well, interestingly enough, that was the Liberals using gun control as they usually use it. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit later of why there's gun control in the first place, past what we
Mm-hmm.
had, pre 2020. But basically, the Liberals, they do what Liberals do, and they sit there and they wait for people to get hurt or some kind of crisis, and then they capitalize on that in a political and ideological manner. So obviously, the event that catalyzed the Liberals was the spree shooting in Nova Scotia on,
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was April 18th, 2020. And
Yes, I think
basically,
so.
despite the fact that the perpetrator never deployed a firearm that was obtained in Canada, they were all smuggled, the ones that he used.
Mm-hmm.
They used that spree shooting as the impetus for the May 2020 gun ban. So of course we had the 1,550 models, which probably represented, I don't know, around 500,000 firearms at that time, physical firearms that were banned.
Mm-hmm.
Then the subsequent bans by the RCMP, which were another 800 models, if memory serves me correctly, and it's gone on and on from there. So it's interesting. I was part of the Mass Casualty Commission inquiry. We were
Mm-hmm.
granted participant status there. So I had access to the evidence package. I had access to everything, and we got to read that before the public did. And there was no gun law, no gun ban, no regulation, no enforcement effort that would have changed the outcome of that. Yet the commission all agreed unanimously at the end that everything in Bill C-71 and Bill C-21 and the bans were what's required to prevent that from happening again. So it was quite an experience.
And those bans, they still add firearms to them. So I think the most recent was maybe a couple of months ago. Actually, maybe
Yeah.
less than that. They added another firearm. Is that correct?
Yes. So in the aggregate, we've lost every single semi-automatic, centerfire semi-automatic rifle in Canada
Mm-hmm.
is now prohibited. A collection of shotguns now prohibited, and virtually all of the semi-automatic 22 caliber rifles that we had in Canada, aside from like literally a handful of them, Ruger 1022, the Plinkster, and maybe a couple more. Other than that, all banned
And the SKS is
under the guise
out
of
of the
public
list for
safety.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the
Well,
handgun freeze is also part of that bill, or it's a different bill?
so all these other things were via order in council, right? So that's a legal instrument that they have to. It's like equivalent to an executive order in the United States. So that's whoever forms government can just write these things. Like this is now the law. So those we are still working. to overturn that, but we'll see. We've lost twice, but doesn't mean we don't continue to fight.
Yeah.
But the only thing that was actually sealed in legislation was a definition of assault style firearm, which is basically semi-automatics with removable magazines. There's
Hmm.
a couple of moving parts there, and then the handgun freeze, so you can't transfer a handgun basically other than to a store or turn it for destruction or whatever. So that's in legislation, so that's different. That requires a majority government to overturn, but the orders in council, with a minority friendly government, we could probably get those taken off.
So just to understand this, the OIC does not go through the House. That does not go through the Parliament.
Yeah, well, this is the outrage, is because there's no debate, there's no transparency, there's no nothing. It's just like, this shall be done, and that's it. Now this applies to everybody. And the reason why we fought the order in council, and we're still fighting it, is because OICs were never meant to be used like that. They were never meant to
Hmm.
commit the government to $10 billion of expenditure over the following years, and to take property away from probably a million or 1.5 million Canadians who haven't done anything to deserve it. That's not what they're for. They're for minor tweaks, like appointing people to government positions or tweaking regulations. They were never meant for that. So it's a real mess. Like, they've created a real mess over the last 10 years.
So the CCFR did take the government to court for the OIC, right? Can you talk us a little bit about that?
So yeah, we did sue the government. Not only did we sue the government, we made a commitment to actually fight them. So there's one approach that you can take, which is file your application to the court and then just
Hmm.
sit back and show up for final arguments. This way you can tell people, oh, we fought the government. Unfortunately, we lost, when in fact you didn't really fight at all. So the
Hmm.
the CCFR, and this has happened before. So this is something that was kind of had gone on in the community a little bit, and we were like, that's not how we're going to approach it. So we made the commitment: we will fight them, and we will throw every single thing that we have at them. So the CCFR filed an application like other people did, private people and organizations. We filed for 3 different injunctions to get gun owners back the use of their firearms while this was all going through. We didn't win any of those, but we still fought like we
Hmm.
promised. We
Yeah.
cross-examined every single one of the government's witnesses, which are called affiants in our system.
Hmm.
And not only did we get to the end of that thing and invest in being there for the whole 7 days of trial, we lost. We turned around. We filed an appeal. We had our day in court there, and the appeal was just denied. And it was a
Yeah.
fishy sort of decision. So right now we're looking at taking that to the Supreme Court of Canada, but a lot of that will depend on what happens in the election. So anyway, we continue to fight these people, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. So you talked to me about Bill C-21 and the OIC, and as far as I understand, this applies only to semi-autos and handguns. And being in the precision shooting, we mainly use bolt-action rifles. So from what I understand, bolt-action rifles are safe in Canada. Is that true?
That's untrue. So there was a variety of bolt action rifles that were banned, even in the ban back in 2020, and bolt action rifles that continued to be banned all the way through. And I actually have some really important commentary to share with you. So
Yeah.
they did that on muzzle velocity, and they also banned certain bolt action rifles by name. And one of
Hmm.
the ones I want to draw your attention to is, if you remember back in C-21, the Liberals came out with this whole list of amendments. And one of them was a big list of guns they wanted to ban. And one of those guns, and there's a bunch of them, Ruger #1, which is a single shot break action rifle.
Yeah.
And but the one I want to highlight is the 1908 Brazilian Mauser. So that's a
Okay.
military rifle designed back in 1908, or whatever, made for sale in 1908. And they wanted to ban this thing. It only came in one caliber. It wasn't a 50 cal. It was a 57 by 7 millimeter Mauser round.
Okay. Hmm.
So far less than 10,000 joules, whatever. They banned that by name. Now, the impetus is, this was designed for military conflict, a bolt action rifle that's over 115 years old. Okay.
Hmm.
If they wanted to ban that, now those amendments were defeated, but now, and so they stepped back, and now they're coming again, and they just did a new list just, in February, right? So if they would have banned that, wouldn't they ban the Remington 700? I mean, that's the M24. That's an active military use in the United States today. Wouldn't they ban the Lee
Yeah.
Enfield? Wouldn't they ban the SKS? Wouldn't they ban? They could ban everything. And then on top of that, when the government's done, here comes the RCMP because they love getting into the mix, and they will ban everything else as a variant of those things.
Hmm.
So I don't know how anyone could think that anything is safe in Canada. Maybe a bolt action 22 for now. I don't know.
And you just said the 10 joules part of the or of the law, and if I understand correctly, that also bans calibers above the 375 enabler. So we're talking 416 Barretts and TRATAC and 50 BMG, right?
Oh yeah, they're all gone, all of them. They're all gone.
And it's not like anybody is using those in, shootings or crimes in downtown Toronto or Montreal.
That's not what it's about. Yeah, that's correct.
I have a question for you. Do you actually think the government believes that those laws will stop shootings or gang shootings in downtown Toronto or things like that? Because they do have the data. And like you said, the ban in May 1st, 2020 was following an event where they were using, or the person, used illegal firearms.
Well, there's really two things going on. So I guess the short answer is, of course, they don't believe that. They are, it's not that these people are not stupid, for sure.
Okay.
I just think that they're malevolent, right? So for them, there's two competing interests. Well, they're not competing; they're complementary interests. Pardon me. Number one
Okay.
is the ruling elite in Canada, right? The Laurentian elites, the people out in the East, the people that have been running Canada since Confederation, more or less, right? Other than a handful of times, they think that we aren't like Americans. We're subjects. We're not citizens. We're subjects of the crown, and they don't think we should have any guns. They just don't believe that. So that anything that pushes that forward is great to them. And the other thing
Okay.
too is they use guns for a couple of reasons. They use guns as a way to mobilize the urban vote, right? To scare urban voters. The only people that are going to stand up to the gun lobby are us. That's like, well, who's the gun lobby? There's just a bunch of licensed gun owners that don't want to have their stuff taken for no good reason, right? But nonetheless, they use us to scare urban voters. So, that's the long and short of it. And if you look at what they've done, there's all that stuff in the early 90s. There's a couple of little things since then, but then in 2020 they did the big one, right? And then
Yeah.
they're like, oh, well, we still have to ban more because there's still more votes to farm. We can scare voters again. And they scared them again in 2021 with this whole thing. Like they're going to make assault weapons legal again. There's a reason why there's so many lies and so much gaslighting. Is because this is a political issue for them. But now that they've got everything that they've got so far, the next time they want to scare voters, what do they have left? They have precision rifles. They have these sniper rifles that can shoot and kill beyond 3 kilometers. They have it's like a big line of people. Everyone, it was the sport shooters and the collectors and all that stuff. People at the front of the line, all those people are out of the line now. Guess who's next? Guess who's at the front? It's hunters and sport and precision shooters. You're the
Yeah.
next guns to get villainized because they still need red meat to throw their base. And they burned up all of us already. So this will never stop as long as there's an urban voter to scare, and as long as there's an idea that us commoners don't get guns, only the government and the police get guns.
Okay.
This kind of thing will persist and it'll continue to expand.
And you were talking about urban voters, and brings me to the next question: is why are we not able to connect to the public? Why are, like, I'm sure a lot of people in Canada don't know that you can have firearms legally, and the moment they hear gun control, they will think, oh well, guns are bad. I'm for banning them. Why aren't we able to connect to the public?
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that too. Number one, licensed gun owners are a minority, a drastic minority. There's only 2.4 million of us in a country of 40 million people. Even if you subtract everyone that's under 18, you'd have to go farther than that. You'd have to subtract everyone that's 14 because in the next election cycle in 4 years, they're going to be voting age, right? So there's two things. There's people that don't have a dog in the fight. Overwhelmingly, most people don't have a dog in the fight. So that's difficult. Most people
Yeah.
don't know why Canadians would need a gun anyway. And I was one of those people in my early 30s. I had no idea, right? So I would have easily voted for or been in agreement with gun control because I see gun violence. Like it's very easy to understand that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's been decades and decades of gaslighting and just pounding away on people. More guns equal more death. The gun control argument is really suits itself to sound bites, to little slogans, right? And that makes sense. More gun, you can't get shot if there's no guns. It's like, well, that's true, but reality is more complicated than that. So our argument takes a lot to explain, right? And you got to
Mm-hmm.
be open, which people are never more have people been so entrenched in their ideology they don't want to hear. Even if you're telling them the truth, they don't want to hear it. And this is very
Yeah.
different than, say, the early 90s. So I think it's a combination of things going on, right? There's a combination of things happening, and that's been a real challenge.
Yeah. Uh, I think the most recent statistics says that there is an increase in new PAL or firearms possession and acquisition licenses in Canada. Why do you think that's happening? And I think it's happening also at the younger population. Why is that happening, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's the same phenomenon as you see with young people voting conservative. They've been having getting the snot beat out of them by the system, and finally reality is catching up, and they're waking up. They're like, wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, I'm never going to be able to afford a home under these circumstances. I'm never going to be able to have a family under these circumstances. And believe it or not, a lot of young people still want to have families and have a good life. Can you imagine? So, so I think it's part of it is people are waking up going like, especially if things look like they're getting unstable. I don't want to be.
Yeah.
It's like I always say, and I don't. If you're familiar with the CCFR, you're familiar with the way that I approach this. I don't talk about self defense very often because that would only play into the people that are against us. So it's a I try to, approach it very gently. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, if you're thinking of terms in physical reality and you see the crime rising, that's another big thing like that. Concealed carry, oddly enough, is something that young people are talking about. Do I think it's
Mm-hmm.
under these political conditions, whether that's a reality? Probably not, because we
Mm-hmm.
don't have guns anymore, other than a handful of them, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, the whole idea of guns, I when you think of instability or public safety, it's almost like a game of musical chairs. Whether or not you like guns, when the music stops, if you're the only one standing there without a gun, you're probably going to be in trouble, right? So I think some people are
Yeah.
like, hey, guns are great for sport, guns are great for hunting, guns are great for recreation. And if the absolute worst day in my life occurred, I could probably defend myself and save my life, or the people that I'm responsible to keep safe. I could probably use that gun for that reason. And none of those things are unreasonable whatsoever. So I think people are they're starting to get the message on an individual level. Government, no. Well, liberals, NDP, Green, and Bloc, no. But individuals are starting to think about like, well, how does my life actually work? Or how does my safety actually work? Why are
Mm-hmm.
people actually getting guns? And I think the CCFR has played some role in that, but there's no way for me to take credit for all of it. But I think that's what you're seeing right now.
Yeah. Rod, first of all, I would like to thank you so much for all the effort you and the CCFR put in representing us and defending our rights. And I'd like to thank you for being with us today. I'm happy we're having this conversation because I think it's an essential conversation to discuss and bring to our audience, especially at this time for obvious reasons.
Well, it's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Rod. For our audience, if you have the chance to bring a friend or a family member who's not a gun owner to the range and show them how we practice firearm safety and discipline, please do so. It will go a long way. Thank you for listening. Until the next one.